This week's reading is a compilation of excerpts outlining various action sequences after the breadth of a much larger strategy is detailed earlier in the book. Although these are other action sequences in the full text of the novel, these chosen scenes are offered to provide the listener a glimpse of the complexity of the greater plan. Chapter 17, Section 1. Mojo did not like the speed at which his group was moving. In terms of security, all caution had been thrown to the wind. Although they had taken every precaution in the book when approaching Kerkert, this element was way behind the timetable, and he had to make up for lost ground, and he had to do it quickly. He had been fortunate that Auser had laid a groundwork for his infiltration by manning safe houses along the way in depth. Mojo had leapfrogged teams from safe house to safe house, keeping a team of no more than 4 at any given house. This also led to some dispersion, but they would all link up at Sisian as the last stop before hitting the objective. At Sisian, he told his insurgents the target: Russian vehicles and material along the Lakin corridor, that sliver of mountain pass that connected the Armenian enclave and Karabakh, where it was nearly surrounded by Azerbaijan territory. Explosives would be saved here in Sisian and replaced with rocket-propelled grenades. These, too, this group had been trained to use. Mojo was frantically aware that both the Zangezur corridor and the rail along the Caspian Sea in Azerbaijan had been already hit. He also knew that his target was supposed to precede the Azeri ones. He was behind schedule, but couldn't rush. The Russians, the Iranians, everyone would be alerted now. They attacked at dusk. It appeared this particular gambit, striking the Russian peacekeepers, had not been anticipated, so the attack was still a massive surprise. Mojo was disciplined. Strike hard, but quickly. Disengage. Do not get mired into a firefight. Break contact. This was guerrilla warfare. Small units hitting an unsuspected enemy, then melting away. One team, one unaccompanied by Mojo and led by a blustery sort, chose to go face-to-face with the Russian bear. They lost. By the time the team had tried to release its volley of RPGs, the Russians had been alerted by radio. One Armenian had gotten off a shot and was lucky that it struck its BMP directly for at least a mobility hit. But the Russians had night vision, and the Armenians had lost any advantage of surprise. It was a slaughter. Russian 12.7mm, 6P50 infantry machine guns mounted in prepared defense laid down the hate onto the outmatched and exposed guerrillas. The 12.7mm round is a large one, and at over 2,600 feet per second velocities, the outcome was an ugly, brutally swift transition to death for the recipient. Caught in interlocking fires, the Armenian counterattack was non-existent. They fell right where they were standing, as bullets ripped their bodies stem to stern. Call it a draw. Mojo's main body had succeeded, but his force was cut by a third. They stealthily moved to their rally point and headed west for the border. Chapter 18, Section 1. The Russians had seen enough. The Russians had absolutely seen quite enough of this, when taken with the attacks Russia had suffered in Crimea, Donbass, and the Mediterranean coast of Syria. They knew it was the Americans. There was no way the Turks could have done it, they believed. They had thought it was the Chinese before, all the evidence had pointed that way. Putin sat back and pondered. Could it have been the Chinese? Are they so brazen? Impossible, it was the Americans. It had to be. We mustn't sit back and do nothing. We must do something bold, something cunning, something to send a message that we are not to be trifled with. Putin looked at his options. There was nothing to strike back at in the area other than Syria, and the Americans had a pretty good air defense there. There was no time to mount a ground force strike. The counterattack had to be immediate. It had to be punishing and show strength. Putin decided he would launch a cyber attack, something symbolic, something in the immediate area where no mistaken intent could be misinterpreted. The Russian cyber teams would roast the Vorotin hydroelectric power cascade, the massive hydroelectric array recently acquired by the American company Contour Global. This, at least, is what the New York Times headlines would scream. Contour Global would indeed shut down its 400-megawatt operations in the 3 massive hydroelectric dams, and they would indeed claim loudly that it had been the victim of a cyber attack. And based on the evidence examined by their cyber forensics team, the originating servers from which the worm and virus had been launched had been determined as Russian IP addresses. Further, the Contour Global press release would detail Russian hacker group likely as the perpetrators of the heinous crime. If this preview broadcast has piqued your curiosity, the book in its entirety will be available for purchase from Amazon.com. Simply search The Zangezur Campaign by Mike Bennett and peruse a catalog of his latest works. Be sure to tune in to Radioactive Redhead to hear further excerpts from the Warlock series. This concludes today's featured segment from Radioactive Redhead. May your days be filled with good memories and laughter, and God bless.